Did Prince William just close the door on Prince Harry and Meghan Markle forever? The words that landed today were more than just a statement. They were a declaration, a royal verdict that sent shockwaves through Buckingham Palace and across the globe. Imagine hearing that a family member is permanently cut off from your world, that the chapter you thought was ongoing is not only paused but closed for good. That's exactly what the world is grappling with right now. And while headlines scream it, the deeper story, the tension, the betrayal, the secrets behind the statement, is only beginning to unravel. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. In the first few seconds of this revelation, chaos erupted in newsrooms, on social media, and within the corridors of the palace itself. Reporters scrambled to decode every word, analysts dissected the phrasing, and royal watchers tried to piece together what this means for the future of the monarchy. But the truth is far more intricate than what appears on a news ticker. There's history, emotion, and personal stakes that no tweet or Instagram post can capture. This isn't just about protocol or public appearances. This is about family, identity, legacy, and perhaps most importantly, control. To understand why this announcement matters so profoundly, you have to consider the entire arc of the Sussex saga. Just a few years ago, Prince Harry was a dutiful royal, attending engagements, smiling for cameras, and fulfilling the roles expected of him as the younger son of the heir apparent. Meghan Markle, an American actress with her own life, entered this world with a promise of partnership and potential change. Together, they seemed like a modernizing force, a bridge between tradition and contemporary life, a symbol of hope for a monarchy in flux. But reality, as it often does, proved more complicated. The first cracks began subtly. Media scrutiny intensified. Rumors of tension between the couple and senior royals began to circulate. Interviews that were meant to humanize them instead fueled debate and division. Then came the step back from royal duties, a decision framed as a bid for autonomy and mental health, but interpreted by some as betrayal and disrespect. And today, the story reaches a turning point that nobody saw coming. An announcement from Prince William himself, stating that Harry and Meghan will never return to royal duties, permanently removed from the royal roster. The words are definitive, unambiguous, and, in their finality, breathtaking. But why now? Why issue a statement that closes the chapter entirely at this precise moment? Timing, as always in the royal world, is everything. Some speculate it's a response to public interviews, media appearances, or new projects from the Sussexes. Others see it as a preemptive measure, a way to control the narrative before any further revelations leak. There is also the human element. William, as the future king, is acutely aware of how perception shapes legacy. He knows that indecision or ambiguity can be seen as weakness. And in the delicate ecosystem of the monarchy, weakness is a luxury that cannot be afforded. So what did William actually say? While the official statement is brief, every word carries weight. Reportedly, he said, "It's done. There is no path back. The Sussex chapter is closed." Simple words, but they carry layers of meaning. "It's done" signals finality, a decision that is non-negotiable. "No path back" confirms the permanent nature of the action, leaving no room for speculation or misinterpretation. And the Sussex chapter is closed frames the story as something that once existed but now belongs to history. It is language carefully chosen for maximum impact, and its reverberations are only beginning to be felt. This is not just a family dispute. This is a seismic shift in one of the most scrutinized institutions in the world. The monarchy relies on appearances, on ceremonies, and on the perception of continuity. Removing two high-profile members permanently changes the dynamics. Every public engagement, every charitable event, every photo op will now occur without them. Their absence is symbolic, practical, and deeply personal all at once. And for the public, the void will be noticeable. Millions around the globe have followed Harry and Meghan's journey, often passionately, and now they must grapple with their absence. How will fans react? Will there be backlash or relief? Only time will tell. But let's zoom in on the personal dimension for a moment. Family is not just a public spectacle. It is deeply intimate, filled with emotions that cannot be measured by headlines. Imagine the tension between brothers, the unspoken words in private corridors, the grief and anger and disappointment that must simmer beneath the surface. William's statement, while formal and public, likely reflects countless hours of internal deliberation, difficult conversations, and perhaps even sleepless nights. The gravity of this decision is not just symbolic, it is profoundly human. And yet, there is more beneath the surface. The timing and phrasing of the statement hint at palace strategy, perhaps even internal negotiation. This is where the story grows even more intriguing. Who advised William to speak now? How did the palace communications team shape the message? Was there an attempt to anticipate public reaction, or was this a raw, emotional response to ongoing tensions? The interplay between personal feelings and institutional imperatives makes this far more than a simple announcement. It is a window into the complex machinery of monarchy itself. Even beyond the palace walls, the global reaction is intense. Social media exploded immediately. Twitter hashtags began trending within minutes. News outlets across the world scrambled to report, analyze, and contextualize. Memes and hot takes appeared almost instantaneously. There is fascination, outrage, and even humor mixed in, a strange, digital age reflection of centuries-old traditions colliding with modern media culture. The story is no longer just a royal matter. It is a global event with emotional stakes for people everywhere. And for Harry and Meghan, their world is now radically altered. Whether they anticipated this level of finality or not, it marks a turning point that cannot be reversed. Autonomy, financial independence, and media ventures may cushion some impact, but the personal dimension, the severing of ties to a family and an institution they once belonged to, is profound. The narrative that they controlled for a few years is now disrupted by a statement that none could ignore. The question remains, how will they respond? Will silence dominate, or will there be a counter-narrative? The stage is set for drama unlike anything we've seen. Now, let's step back and ask the question that everyone is thinking. Why does this matter now? The monarchy has always been about continuity, about rituals, and about the careful management of perception. By permanently removing Harry and Meghan, William is making a statement about the limits of deviation, about the consequences of stepping outside established boundaries. It is a signal to the public, to the media, and to other members of the family. This isn't merely about one couple. It is about preserving a system, a brand, and a legacy that spans centuries. The stakes could not be higher. But here's where it gets even more compelling. Whispers of what happened behind the palace doors hint at stories never before told. There are leaks, anonymous sources, and hints of private confrontations that make the public statement only the tip of the iceberg. What William said publicly is only part of the narrative. The full story includes personal conflict, strategic maneuvering, and moments of intense emotional friction. And some of these details, though unconfirmed officially, are already reshaping how insiders and observers understand the decision. It's also worth noting the historical significance. Never before in modern times has a royal family member been so explicitly removed from duties in such a final and public way. Comparisons to previous departures, Edward VIII, Princess Margaret, other royal controversies, come to mind, but the context is different. This is not a voluntary abdication. This is an enforced, permanent exclusion, framed as a protective measure for the institution. The emotional weight is staggering, and the precedent it sets will be analyzed for generations. And yet, in the midst of all this drama, curiosity persists. What exactly triggered this announcement? Was it a response to a recent interview, a book deal, a media leak, or ongoing tension within the family? Or is it something even deeper, something that points to an internal royal struggle unseen by the public? Every rumor, every speculation, only adds to the suspense. And it's precisely this mix of transparency and secrecy that keeps millions of people glued to the story. So where does this leave the world? For the British public, the Commonwealth, and international audiences, it is a moment of reckoning. The monarchy is evolving, or at least attempting to assert its authority and identity amid a changing cultural landscape. And while some cheer the clarity, others lament the loss of familial bonds, public connection, and the personal story that so many had invested in emotionally. Harry and Meghan are no longer just a couple. They are a symbol, a flashpoint, and now, a closed chapter in one of the most storied institutions on Earth. And yet, despite the apparent finality, one question lingers. What comes next? William's statement may have closed a chapter, but stories of this magnitude rarely end neatly. There are layers yet to be revealed, personal narratives still unfolding, and reactions that will continue to shape the public perception of both the monarchy and the Sussexes themselves. The announcement was definitive, but the implications are far-reaching and deeply human. The shock is only the beginning. And so we arrive at the mini cliffhanger. What happened in the moments immediately following William's statement that no one saw coming? The official words were published, headlines went live, and social media exploded. But inside the palace, private conversations, heated debates, and unanticipated moves were already taking place. What came next would change everything, and it would set the stage for revelations that the public is only beginning to glimpse. The story, as we now see, is far from over, and what follows may shock the world even more than the statement itself. What happens when the royal family drops a bombshell so seismic that the palace itself seems to shake? When Prince William announced that Harry and Meghan would never return to royal duties, the news did more than just ripple across the media. It sent shockwaves that reverberated through every corridor, every private apartment, and every meeting room inside Buckingham Palace. The announcement wasn't just a statement. It was a verdict, an unmistakable judgment that altered the course of one of the most scrutinized families in the world. But how exactly did the palace react? And why did this statement strike so hard? It started almost immediately after the words were released. Courtiers, aides, and staff scrambled. Some had only a moment to process the finality of the decision before reporters and camera crews were at the gates. Phones buzzed incessantly. Private messaging threads, normally buzzing with routine updates, suddenly filled with urgent questions. People who had spent years meticulously managing the monarchy's image were now confronted with an unthinkable reality. The Sussexes, who had dominated public attention for years, were officially, permanently, out. The reaction inside the palace was a mixture of relief, disbelief, and tension. For some, the decision was a necessary step to protect the institution, to draw a line under years of controversy and media frenzy. For others, it felt personal, an irrevocable judgment against family members who were once close, now relegated to a permanent, public exile. Imagine being in that room, hearing the news and realizing that decades of family ties, of shared history, were suddenly defined by absence. The emotional weight was enormous. Outside, the world was watching. The announcement hit news channels like a tidal wave. Breaking news alerts flashed across phones, televisions, and social media platforms. Millions of people, many of whom had followed the Sussex story for years, paused, read, and reacted instantly. And while the public may have seen just the words, insiders knew the meaning ran far deeper. This wasn't a routine update. This was a line drawn in stone. But the shock didn't stop at the palace doors. It spread outward, creating a ripple effect that caught almost everyone off guard. Newspapers scrambled to reword their stories mid-print. Reporters debated the implications in real time. Analysts dissected every word for nuance, searching for hidden meaning, for clues about what came next. Was this a final act of control by William? Or was it a message aimed at the broader public, signaling that the monarchy would no longer tolerate deviation, regardless of the individuals involved? The questions multiplied, and the answers were elusive. What made this shockwave so profound is that it was sudden yet inevitable. Anyone who had followed the Sussex saga knew tensions had been mounting. Public interviews, media leaks, and high-profile projects by Harry and Meghan had strained relationships. But no one had anticipated a statement so definitive, so uncompromising. The timing itself became a point of speculation. Was this planned months in advance? Or was it a reaction to a new development that the public had yet to see? The palace, always careful to present a composed front, had just shown its hand, revealing that even centuries-old institutions can strike decisively and suddenly. The emotional tension inside the royal family cannot be overstated. Brothers divided, cousins watching the fallout, advisors caught in the middle of family loyalty and institutional obligation. Every private conversation carried the weight of history, and every glance in the palace hallways likely carried unspoken messages. William, as the future king, had made a choice, and the decision was irreversible. For Harry, this meant more than losing ceremonial roles. It meant being publicly and permanently marginalized. For Meghan, it meant a permanent exclusion from the institution she had joined, albeit under intense scrutiny. The personal stakes were immense, and yet the statement was delivered with the precision of a seasoned leader. And the timing of the public announcement added another layer of shock. It wasn't just the statement itself, it was the suddenness with which the news hit the world. Reporters scrambled to verify, commentators speculated wildly, and social media erupted within minutes. Within hours, hashtags referencing Harry and Meghan were trending worldwide. The story had become bigger than any single media outlet could contain. It had become a phenomenon, a global event that touched on identity, family, tradition, and modernity. And through it all, the palace maintained a composed front, aware that perception was everything. But inside, there was chaos. Behind closed doors, aides discussed contingency plans. Senior staff debated how to manage the media, how to respond to potential fallout, and how to protect the family image while navigating the storm of public reaction. Every word spoken, every decision made in those hours carried consequences. One misstep could have turned the announcement from a strategic act of control into a PR disaster of historic proportions. And yet, the statement itself had already succeeded in asserting dominance, clarity, and finality. What's fascinating is how quickly this shockwave reached across the Atlantic. In the United States, Meghan's home country, coverage was instantaneous. Media outlets dissected every line, compared reactions to previous interviews, and speculated about the couple's next moves. Fans and critics alike reacted passionately, sharing opinions, outrage, and speculation. Some praised William's decisiveness. Others condemned what they saw as family cruelty. The reaction highlighted the global dimension of this story, underscoring how interconnected the monarchy has become with modern media, celebrity culture, and public sentiment. And yet, the true shockwave is not just external. Within the royal ecosystem, every member of the family felt the impact. Conversations that were once private are now public by default. Relationships that were once stable are now subject to scrutiny. Trust, loyalty, and even affection are weighed against duty, image, and history. It is a delicate balancing act that only the royals fully understand, and a permanent removal from the roster is a move that reshapes these dynamics irreversibly. The palace had to contend not only with the media, but also with public perception. In today's world, where every statement can go viral within minutes, managing the narrative is critical. A single misinterpreted word could spark outrage or conspiracy theories. For the royal family, controlling the message meant framing the removal as both necessary and compassionate. Necessary to preserve the institution, compassionate in acknowledging the couple's past contributions. The precision of language, the timing of the release, and the measured tone all contributed to the initial shockwave's effectiveness. And yet, for Harry and Meghan, the announcement landed like a thunderclap. Imagine receiving word that your roles, responsibilities, and connections to one of the most historic families in the world have been permanently revoked. It is a personal blow, a professional setback, and a public spectacle rolled into one. How do you process that? How do you respond when your public identity, financial endeavors, and personal relationships are suddenly reframed by a single announcement? It is a moment of reckoning, both emotionally and strategically, that could shape the rest of their lives. The public, meanwhile, is left to grapple with mixed emotions. Some feel closure, believing the monarchy needed to assert boundaries and discipline. Others feel heartbreak or anger, sympathizing with the couple's experience of scrutiny and pressure. And somewhere in the middle lies fascination, the irresistible curiosity that drives audiences to follow every development, speculate on motives, and debate the fairness of the decision. The shockwave is not just about the palace. It is about the audience, the media, and the broader cultural moment. And here is the most compelling part. Even as the announcement seemed final, the ripple effects were already unfolding. Leaks about private conversations, speculation about further consequences, and rumors of behind-the-scenes conflicts began circulating almost immediately. The shockwave was not a single event. It was a series of impacts, spreading outward, touching every corner of the royal world and beyond. And as with any true shockwave, the aftermath is often more dramatic than the initial impact. Which leads us to the cliffhanger. In the hours immediately following the announcement, whispers emerged of a private confrontation, a conversation between William and Harry that no one outside the room could have imagined. Details are murky, sources are tight-lipped, and yet insiders hint that what was said may have changed the trajectory of their relationship forever. What was said behind closed doors, and how will it influence the unfolding story of the Sussexes? The answers remain tantalizingly out of reach, but the next chapter promises revelations that could shock even the most seasoned royal watchers. What does it really mean when Prince William speaks with finality? When he delivered the words that Harry and Meghan would never return to royal duties, he did not merely make an announcement. He set the tone for an era, drew a line under years of speculation, and, in the process, reshaped the public perception of the royal family forever. Every syllable, every pause, every carefully chosen phrase was calculated. But what was the thinking behind it, and why was it so definitive? The statement itself was short, almost deceptively simple. It's done. There is no path back. The Sussex chapter is closed. On the surface, it reads like a line from a press release, a corporate memo, or a legal document. But for anyone who understands the monarchy, the layers of meaning are profound. It's done is not merely descriptive, it is judgmental. It signals closure, a finality that cannot be reversed. By choosing those words, William communicates authority, control, and a refusal to entertain ambiguity. It is the sort of language that leaves no room for negotiation, compromise, or reinterpretation. Then there is no path back, a phrase that feels almost cold, clinical, and absolute. It eliminates any possibility of speculation about reconciliation or return. In royal terms, this is unprecedented in its clarity. Previous controversies, Edward VIII's abdication, for instance, left room for ambiguity, debate, or historical reinterpretation. Here, William ensures that the record is crystal clear. Harry and Meghan are no longer simply stepping back or taking a hiatus. They are permanently removed. The language is deliberate, precise, and uncompromising. Finally, the Sussex chapter is closed. That phrasing transforms the couple's story into history. It signals to the world that this narrative, which dominated headlines and captivated audiences for years, has reached its conclusion. Chapter implies a story, a narrative arc, a journey that is complete. In doing so, William frames the statement not as an act of cruelty, but as a declaration of fact. The Sussex story existed, it unfolded, and now it is formally ended. There is no sequel, no next installment sanctioned by the monarchy. But the brilliance of the statement lies not just in its words. It is in what is implied, what is omitted, and what is left for interpretation. While the announcement is definitive, it also raises questions. Was this a personal decision by William alone, or the culmination of discussions with advisors, Charles, and senior staff? Did it take months of planning, or was it a response to a recent event, a moment of clarity, or even frustration? The mystery behind the reasoning fuels speculation, making the statement even more impactful. Inside the palace, the delivery of this statement was a carefully orchestrated moment. Staff, aides, and senior courtiers understood the gravity of its impact. Timing is critical in royal communication. Releasing the statement at the right moment ensures maximum clarity and control. Too early, and it might have been overshadowed by other events. Too late, and speculation could have spiraled into a narrative the family could not contain. The palace communications team, seasoned in controlling public perception, likely advised on every nuance, from the phrasing to the timing to the channels used for dissemination. Every element was intentional. The reaction outside the palace was instantaneous. Media outlets dissected the phrasing, speculated on subtext, and debated its implications. Commentators contrasted it with previous royal statements, noting that no such finality had been delivered regarding a family member in decades. Social media amplified every word, creating a real-time feedback loop that both reflected and shaped public perception. Within hours, the statement had reached millions, setting the tone for discussion, analysis, and emotional response across the globe. Yet, for all the clarity, there is an emotional subtext. William's words convey authority, but they also hint at disappointment, frustration, and perhaps even a sense of inevitability. The statement is not delivered in anger. It is delivered with calculated finality. It signals that all options have been exhausted, that the decision has been weighed, considered, and ultimately codified. The personal stakes are enormous. This is not just a professional decision. It is a family decision. And in families, words like these carry consequences that go far beyond the immediate moment. For Harry and Meghan, the statement lands as both a legal and emotional blow. There is no path back, no future engagements, no ceremonial roles. Their identities as royals, once central to their public personas, are formally severed. The repercussions are not merely symbolic. They are practical. Invitations to events, titles, and responsibilities are all removed. And in the broader context of the monarchy, this clarity prevents ambiguity or mixed messages, ensuring that the institution maintains its authority and stability. Public interpretation is equally fascinating. Supporters of William and the monarchy view the statement as decisive, necessary, and emblematic of strong leadership. They see it as a message that the monarchy will not be swayed by controversy, media pressure, or celebrity influence. Critics, on the other hand, interpret it as harsh, inflexible, and potentially damaging to familial relationships. The polarized response highlights the dual nature of royal communication. It must serve both as a message to the public and a message to the family. William's statement achieves both simultaneously. The strategic timing also suggests an awareness of global attention. By issuing the statement now, the monarchy preempts potential media narratives, particularly those that might portray the couple as aggrieved or misunderstood. It takes control of the story, positioning the monarchy as decisive and unwavering. The optics are crucial. Every word, pause, and phrasing choice is scrutinized, understood, and intended to convey authority without overt aggression. Even the brevity of the statement is telling. Short sentences, clear language, and a lack of embellishment emphasize the finality. There are no apologies, no caveats, no hedging. The message is simple and unmistakable. The chapter is over. In a world where public figures often hedge, clarify, or backtrack, this level of decisiveness stands out. It signals not only the end of a story, but also the authority of the speaker. William, as the future king, asserting his leadership, vision, and control over the institution and its narrative. But within this clarity lies contradiction. While the words assert control, the context reveals tension. The monarchy, an institution built on tradition, ceremony, and continuity, must now navigate the consequences of permanently excluding two high-profile family members. Public reaction, media interpretation, and even international opinion become variables that the palace must manage carefully. The statement asserts certainty, but the ripple effects are unpredictable. How will the public, accustomed to the narrative of the Sussexes, respond? How will international observers perceive the monarchy's decisiveness versus rigidity? These questions hang in the air, unanswered but potent. And then there is the human element. Beyond titles, roles, and responsibilities, the statement affects relationships. Brothers, cousins, advisors, and staff all must process the implications. Personal emotions, unspoken grievances, and historical baggage intertwine with institutional decisions. The words are deliberate, but the reactions are organic, unpredictable, and deeply emotional. The announcement is a legal and procedural act, but it is also a human one, layered with emotion, complexity, and consequence. The palace understood this. Reports suggest that the delivery of the statement was coordinated carefully, balancing public impact with private management. Conversations behind the scenes likely addressed potential fallout, damage control, and follow-up communications. Every eventuality was considered, every potential question anticipated. Yet, despite careful planning, the statement's effect was immediate and profound. The shockwave that began with the announcement reverberated instantly through every channel of communication, every media outlet, and every public forum. What makes the statement so compelling is its dual function. It is both definitive and provocative. It closes a chapter, yet it invites speculation. It asserts control, yet it raises questions about motivation, timing, and impact. In that sense, William's words are a masterclass in royal communication, blending authority with subtle intrigue. The statement is designed to be clear, yet it leaves enough unsaid to fuel discussion, analysis, and fascination. And as the world digests the implications, one question remains. What happened immediately after the statement was delivered? Reports hint at private conversations, tense discussions, and moments of reflection that none of the public could see. How did Harry respond in private? Did Meghan anticipate this level of finality? And what does this mean for future interactions between the brothers? The answers are closely guarded, known only to those inside the palace walls. But insiders suggest that the moments following William's statement may have set the stage for further drama, confrontations, and revelations that the public is only beginning to glimpse. The cliffhanger looms. While the statement is final, the private repercussions are just beginning. In the hours and days that followed, events unfolded behind closed doors. Conversations, decisions, and emotional confrontations that would determine the trajectory of the Sussex saga in ways no one outside could predict. What exactly happened in those moments? And how will it shape the unfolding story? The answers are as tantalizing as they are elusive, promising a drama that is far from over. Has there ever been a royal story quite like this one? One that begins with promise, sweeps across the globe with glamour, and ends with a declaration of permanent separation from duty and tradition? When Prince William declared that Harry and Meghan would never return to royal roles, he did more than close a chapter. He ended an era. The Sussex story, which had dominated headlines, captivated audiences, and fueled endless speculation, was no longer ongoing. It was over, finished, irreversible. But to understand the full weight of this moment, we need to explore not just the words themselves, but the story behind them, the emotions that fueled them, and the implications that will ripple for decades to come. From the outset, the Sussexes' journey was extraordinary. Harry, the younger son of Prince Charles and Princess Diana, carried with him a legacy that was both a privilege and a burden. Meghan Markle, an American actress with her own career, stepped into this world not just as a partner, but as someone who would inevitably be scrutinized, celebrated, and criticized in equal measure. Together, they seemed poised to modernize the monarchy, to bring a fresh perspective to centuries of tradition. Their wedding was celebrated globally, a media spectacle with millions watching, and their early days in royal life were filled with both adoration and curiosity. Yet the cracks appeared early. Reports of tension with senior family members, the media's relentless coverage, and cultural differences began to strain the narrative. Public perception shifted subtly at first, then dramatically. Interviews intended to humanize the couple often had the opposite effect, fueling debate and controversy. Step-backs from royal duties, financial independence, and high-profile projects introduced a new dynamic. The Sussexes were no longer just royals. They were public figures operating in their own sphere, with influence, autonomy, and a platform that rivaled traditional media outlets. The permanent removal announced by William is the culmination of these tensions. It is not a snap decision. It is a strategic, deliberate, and, above all, final action. By framing the situation as a permanent exclusion, William signals to the world that the monarchy has limits, and that deviation from expectation comes with real consequences. It's done. There is no path back. The Sussex chapter is closed. These words are not just a statement. They are a boundary, drawn clearly and irrevocably. The emotional weight of this closure cannot be understated. For William, it is a decision rooted in both duty and personal stakes. As the future king, his responsibility extends beyond family loyalty to the stability of the institution. Leadership often demands tough choices, ones that may hurt those closest to you. And yet, even with careful reasoning, the act of permanently removing a brother and sister-in-law from royal roles carries personal consequences that will not fade with time. Harry and Meghan, on the other hand, are forced to reckon with the ramifications. Their public identity has always been entwined with royalty. Their roles as Duke and Duchess, as representatives of the monarchy, define much of their influence and visibility. Now, that connection is formally severed. What does it mean to be permanently removed from an institution that shaped your public persona, your responsibilities, and your global identity? How does one navigate a world where the privileges, duties, and recognition that once came naturally are now explicitly denied? These are questions that no statement, however definitive, can answer fully. And yet, Closure is not just about endings. It is about transformation. The end of the Sussex chapter represents an opportunity to reshape narratives, both for the monarchy and for the couple themselves. For William, it is a signal to the public, the media, and the family. Boundaries exist, and the institution must be protected. For Harry and Meghan, it is a forced pivot, a moment to redefine identity, influence, and purpose outside the royal framework. The story does not end here, it evolves. But the parameters of that evolution have been redrawn permanently. Historically, royal departures have often been fraught with ambiguity. Edward VIII abdicated, Princess Margaret navigated family tension, and other figures faced public scrutiny. But what sets the Sussex case apart is the permanence and clarity of the announcement. This is not a voluntary abdication or a temporary step back. It is a definitive removal, one that transforms relationships, duties, and the public narrative. The implications are profound, both emotionally and institutionally. The palace's strategy in communicating this is noteworthy. By keeping the statement concise, deliberate, and unambiguous, William ensured that there could be no misinterpretation. Yet the language also allows room for speculation, inviting the public to wonder about the nuances, the private conversations, and the motivations behind the decision. This dual function, clarity and intrigue, is a hallmark of strategic royal communication. It asserts authority while fueling curiosity, maintaining engagement long after the statement is released. Emotionally, the declaration strikes at the heart of family dynamics. Brothers, cousins, and advisors are all affected. Trust, loyalty, and affection are now interwoven with duty, protocol, and public perception. The permanent removal is not just a professional measure. It is deeply personal. Every interaction, every decision, every public appearance now carries new weight. Relationships that once seemed stable are now defined by absence and distance. The emotional tension is palpable, even from afar. For the public, the closure of the Sussex chapter evokes mixed reactions. Some feel relief, believing the monarchy needed to assert boundaries and discipline. Others express empathy for the couple, recognizing the intense scrutiny and pressure they faced. And yet, fascination persists, driving continued attention, speculation, and engagement. In a way, the closure has paradoxically ensured that interest in the Sussex story will remain high. It is no longer a matter of ongoing involvement, but of understanding the finality, the drama, and the consequences of this unprecedented decision. The ripple effects are already visible in media coverage, social discourse, and public opinion. Headlines reflect shock, analysis, and debate, while social media buzzes with opinions ranging from celebration to outrage. Fans and critics alike dissect every word, every nuance, and every implied meaning. The narrative has shifted from anticipation to reflection. What truly happens when a royal announcement shakes the world? Most of us only see the headlines, the snippets on social media, or the glossy magazine spreads. But inside the palace, behind those thick walls, life unfolds differently. The announcement that Harry and Meghan would never return to royal duties was not just a public statement. It was a seismic shift that set off private storms, tense negotiations, and emotional reckonings that no camera or microphone could capture. What was said behind the palace doors, and how did it shape the story we think we know? The atmosphere inside Buckingham Palace immediately after the statement can only be described as electric tension. Courtiers and aides, trained for decades in the art of protocol and decorum, found themselves navigating unprecedented emotional currents. Phones buzzed incessantly, but not for news alone. Urgent communications were being sent to clarify responsibilities, coordinate media messaging, and manage potential crises. Staff who were accustomed to routine procedures now had to adjust to a reality where decisions of immense personal and institutional weight were being processed in real time. Every move mattered, but it wasn't just administrative chaos. The palace is a living organism, filled with human beings whose personal emotions intertwine with professional duties. For those closest to the Sussexes, the announcement triggered a maelstrom of feelings: disbelief, relief, concern, and, in some cases, sorrow. Staff members who had interacted daily with Harry and Meghan had to reconcile professional loyalty with the reality of permanent removal. It is one thing to understand the necessity of a statement. It is another to witness its immediate emotional impact on colleagues, family, and yourself. One of the most fascinating aspects of this period was the private conversations between senior royals. While the public saw a calm, formal declaration, the discussions behind closed doors were anything but calm. William reportedly spent hours conferring with Charles, strategizing not just the content of the statement, but also anticipating every potential consequence. Every word, every nuance, every phrasing had to be considered, both for its public interpretation and its private fallout. This was not simply crisis management. It was a delicate dance between family loyalty, institutional authority, and global perception. Then there were the aides and courtiers, navigating the tension between discretion and responsibility. They had to manage communications, prepare staff for the public response, and ensure that the message remained consistent across all channels. Any slip could provoke media frenzy, fan outrage, or misinterpretation that might damage the monarchy's carefully curated image. Imagine the weight of such responsibility, balancing personal loyalty, institutional duty, and global scrutiny simultaneously. What adds an even deeper layer of intrigue is the role of intermediaries. Senior advisors, legal counsel, and PR teams worked behind the scenes to shape how the announcement would land externally while maintaining internal cohesion. Every step was scrutinized, every conversation documented, and every potential scenario mapped. In some ways, it resembled a high-stakes chess game, with moves calculated not just for immediate impact, but for long-term strategy. The palace had to think several steps ahead, predicting reactions, anticipating questions, and controlling as much of the narrative as possible. Yet, despite meticulous planning, the emotional undercurrents were unavoidable. Harry and Meghan's absence was felt immediately. Personal relationships, once assumed to be resilient, were suddenly tested in ways that had no precedent. Private exchanges between William and other family members revealed layers of frustration, concern, and unresolved tension. These were not merely professional decisions being executed. They were deeply human, emotional acts, influenced by history, personality, and the weight of family legacy. Insiders suggest that there were several private confrontations following the announcement. Conversations reportedly grew heated as emotions ran high, blending disappointment with a sense of inevitability. Words were exchanged in private rooms, words that no cameras or journalists captured, words that may have reshaped how each family member perceives the other. It is in these moments, when cameras are absent and the world cannot see, that the deepest truths of relationships often emerge. And yet, even as tension dominated, protocol persisted. The palace operates on centuries of tradition, and no emotional upheaval can completely override the mechanisms of ceremonial order. Staff continued to manage communications, security teams monitored potential public disruptions, and formal channels ensured that the official message remained consistent. This juxtaposition of intense human emotion and strict institutional procedure is one of the defining characteristics of royal life, and it became especially apparent in the wake of this announcement. Another layer of intrigue lies in the subtle signals sent through body language, private meetings, and informal communications. In a palace filled with eyes and ears, even small gestures carry meaning. A quiet look exchanged in a hallway, a carefully worded email, a meeting called with urgency. All of these signaled that while the public statement was clear, there was more unfolding beneath the surface. Observers who understand royal dynamics know that what happens behind the doors often tells a story far more compelling than the official line. The human stakes were also deeply personal. For William, the decision to permanently remove his brother and sister-in-law was laden with emotional weight. Leadership, in the royal context, demands decisiveness, but decisiveness does not preclude guilt, doubt, or sadness. The balance between familial loyalty and institutional duty is delicate and often painful. The words delivered publicly were final, but internally, they likely sparked reflection, debate, and emotional processing that continues to unfold even now. For Harry and Meghan, the private fallout would have been equally intense. To be permanently removed from an institution that shaped your identity is profoundly disorienting. There is grief, of course, a mourning of roles, titles, and familial connections, but there is also anger, defiance, and a drive to carve a new path. Sources close to the couple suggest that in the days following the announcement, there was intense discussion about next steps, strategies, and messaging. Even outside the palace, their influence remains global, and they are positioned to respond in ways that extend beyond the boundaries William sought to impose. Meanwhile, palace staff had to navigate an even more complex web, maintaining composure in front of the public while managing private anxiety. Every event, every meeting, every engagement carried new significance. How do you continue operations when a story of this magnitude has just redefined the personal and professional landscape? How do you maintain the appearance of order when emotions run high behind the scenes? These are questions the palace has faced countless times, but rarely with such a high-profile and emotionally charged situation. The ripple effects also extended to the monarchy's global image. Advisors were acutely aware that the announcement would be scrutinized internationally. Cultural perceptions, media bias, and historical context all had to be considered. The decision was not merely a domestic matter, it was a global one. Every reaction, from headlines in the United States to commentary in Commonwealth countries, needed to be anticipated, managed, and integrated into the palace's ongoing narrative strategy. And yet, despite all this orchestration, one truth remains: human emotion cannot be fully controlled. Behind the palace doors, feelings of betrayal, grief, frustration, and even hope continue to influence decisions and relationships. Staff, family members, and advisors are all navigating their own emotional landscapes while trying to maintain the appearance of stability. The tension between personal feeling and institutional duty is palpable, and it ensures that the story is far from static. Which brings us to the cliffhanger. Insiders hint that during those private hours following the announcement, a conversation occurred between William and Harry that changed everything. Details are murky, but the intensity of the exchange, the emotions involved, and the possible repercussions suggest that the story of the Sussexes is far from complete. What was said in that room, and how will it shape the next stage of this saga? For now, those answers remain hidden, locked behind palace walls. But what happened there promises to reshape everything we think we know about the end of the Sussex chapter. What happens when an announcement from the royal family doesn't just make headlines? It breaks the internet. When Prince William declared that Harry and Meghan would never return to royal duties, the world didn't just react. It exploded. Social media lit up like a digital fireworks display, traditional media scrambled to provide coverage, and public discourse shifted instantly. But what does this media storm tell us about the power of perception, the influence of narrative, and the global fascination with the Sussex saga? Within minutes of the statement going live, news outlets around the world began reporting, analyzing, and speculating. The timing was perfect for media saturation: morning broadcasts in Europe, prime time in the United States, and instant updates in Asia meant that virtually every time zone was catching the news at peak attention. Headlines range from the sensational to the analytical. Royal family cuts ties with Harry and Meghan permanently. The Sussex chapter is closed forever, a family rift for the ages. The framing alone shaped the initial public perception, emphasizing drama, finality, and intrigue. Social media, however, is where the story truly went viral. Within moments, hashtags referencing Harry and Meghan were trending worldwide. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook became real-time arenas of debate, speculation, and emotional expression. Fans and critics alike weighed in, dissecting every word of the announcement and trying to read between the lines. Memes proliferated, video clips of past royal events were recirculated, and threads analyzing facial expressions, body language, and tone exploded across platforms. The global fascination with the Sussex story turned a formal statement into a cultural phenomenon overnight. Public reaction was predictably polarized. Some hailed William's decisiveness as necessary leadership, framing the statement as a protective measure for the monarchy. These voices emphasized duty, tradition, and the importance of boundaries within the family and the institution. Supporters argued that decades of controversy, media scrutiny, and deviation from protocol had to be addressed decisively. They saw the finality of the statement not as cruelty, but as clarity, a way to restore order and reinforce institutional integrity. Others, however, perceived it as harsh, punitive, and even cruel. Social media echoed with empathy for Harry and Meghan, highlighting the pressures, scrutiny, and racism the couple had faced. Critics questioned whether the monarchy had overstepped, interpreting the permanent exclusion as a personal attack rather than a strategic necessity. Discussions often turned emotional, with hashtags and trending topics reflecting outrage, sadness, or calls for reconciliation. The global reaction underscored the reality that the monarchy no longer operates solely within the UK. It is a brand, a symbol, and a story that the world watches and interprets through its own cultural lenses. The media frenzy also highlighted the evolving nature of celebrity and monarchy. Harry and Meghan, once purely royal figures, had become global influencers, activists, and media personalities. Their work outside the palace, including charitable projects, documentaries, and interviews, created an entirely new dynamic. The statement from William, while definitive, intersected with a media ecosystem that could amplify, distort, or reframe the narrative in real time. It was a collision of centuries-old tradition with modern, instantaneous global attention, a perfect storm for drama. Moreover, the coverage revealed just how much people invest emotionally in the royal family. For decades, audiences have followed weddings, scandals, and milestones, developing strong attachments to individual members. The Sussex story, with its blend of glamour, controversy, and relatability, had captured imaginations worldwide. When William's announcement closed the chapter, it wasn't just news. It was a collective emotional event. Millions of people processed grief, relief, anger, or satisfaction simultaneously, demonstrating the power of narrative to shape global sentiment. Traditional media, meanwhile, approached the story with a mixture of caution and sensationalism. Analysts dissected the phrasing of the statement, compared it to historical precedents, and speculated about what it meant for the monarchy's future. Newspapers and news websites produced long-form content exploring the historical context, the personal stakes, and the global implications. Television anchors debated endlessly, sometimes repeating the statement word for word, other times questioning its implications. The saturation was total, there was no escaping it. Interestingly, public opinion surveys began to emerge almost immediately. Polls in the UK suggested a mix of support and skepticism, reflecting the complex feelings that citizens have toward the royal family. Internationally, opinions varied widely. In the United States, where Meghan's background and media presence resonate strongly, many were sympathetic to the couple. In Commonwealth nations, reactions were mixed, reflecting both loyalty to the monarchy and curiosity about institutional decisions. This illustrates that a royal announcement, while localized, reverberates globally, influencing perceptions far beyond its immediate jurisdiction. The media storm also magnified the stakes for the palace. Every response, or lack thereof, from Harry and Meghan, senior royals, or advisors was scrutinized, magnified, and interpreted. The palace had to maintain a delicate balance, assert authority, manage public perception, and navigate the unpredictable nature of global media. One misstep could ignite further controversy. Every nuance, from press releases to interviews to official photographs, carried meaning. The announcement was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of a complex dance between message control and public interpretation. Even more fascinating is how the storm extended into pop culture and online communities. Social media influencers, podcasters, and YouTubers contributed analysis, often blending facts with speculation. Viral clips dissected past interviews, body language, and historical interactions. Memes, commentary, and opinion pieces created a feedback loop where public emotion fueled content and content fueled further discussion. In many ways, the Sussex story has become a global, participatory phenomenon, a story where audiences are not merely observers, but active interpreters, critics, and commentators. And yet, despite all this public attention, one question remains. What did Harry and Meghan think as they watched this storm unfold? Sources suggest that in the hours following the announcement, they were processing not just the statement itself, but the global reaction to it. How does one reconcile a permanent removal from an institution with ongoing public adoration and media influence? How does one navigate a world where perception, narrative, and personal identity intersect in ways both empowering and constraining. These are questions that only the couple can fully answer, but speculation alone underscores the intense emotional and strategic complexity of the moment. Finally, the media storm has a lasting consequence. It ensures the story's endurance. By generating global attention, debate, and emotion, it guarantees that the permanent closure of the Sussex chapter remains a topic of fascination long after the initial announcement. While the chapter is closed in formal terms, it is now open as a subject of analysis, discussion, and cultural reflection. The storm reinforces the drama, ensuring that the narrative continues to evolve, even if the official roles have ended. And now, the cliffhanger. While the world reacts, insiders hint that private communications between Harry, Meghan, and their advisors are already underway, signaling that the couple may have plans that could challenge, redefine, or respond to William's statement in ways no one outside the palace can predict. What will they do next, and how will it reshape the story of the Sussexes? The answers remain tantalizingly out of reach, but they promise developments that could shake the monarchy again and perhaps even shock the world. What happens when words intended to assert authority collide with decades of personal relationships? When Prince William's statement formally closed the Sussex chapter, the impact was felt not only by the public and the media, but most intensely inside the family itself. Behind the palace walls, emotions ran high, relationships were tested, and every member of the royal household was forced to confront the human consequences of a decision that was as strategic as it was deeply personal. The first emotional shockwaves rippled through the immediate family. Charles, William's father, had always been caught between his sons. On one hand, his role as king and as the head of the institution required a measured, authoritative stance. On the other, he had a deeply personal relationship with Harry, shaped by decades of love, conflict, and shared history. William's decision, though seemingly necessary from a structural standpoint, put Charles in a precarious emotional position. How do you balance loyalty to one son while upholding the rules of the institution that must endure beyond personal relationships? Harry, for his part, was reportedly devastated. The announcement was not merely a professional setback. It was a profound personal blow. Being permanently removed from royal duties meant losing not just titles and responsibilities, but also the emotional connection to the institution and family identity that had been a part of his life since birth. Sources close to the couple indicate that Harry felt a mixture of grief, frustration, and disbelief. The public statement crystallized what had previously been a series of uncertainties. The reality was permanent exclusion, and there was no path back. Meghan, similarly, faced an emotional maelstrom. From her perspective, the announcement was both a public humiliation and a private challenge. The palace had formalized what she had long sensed. The boundaries and limitations of her role were now permanently drawn. Beyond professional implications, there were personal ones. Her connection to the family, already complicated by cultural differences, media scrutiny, and historical tension, had been redefined in the harshest terms. The emotional fallout was immense, a combination of isolation, anxiety, and determination to protect her family while navigating the new reality. The ripple effects extended beyond the immediate nuclear family. Cousins, aunts, uncles, and advisors all processed the news in real time, each filtering it through the lens of personal experience, loyalty, and responsibility. Princess Anne, for example, known for her pragmatic yet deeply involved approach to family dynamics, reportedly expressed concern over the human cost of the decision. Staff who had worked with Harry and Meghan for years experienced a similar emotional turbulence, caught between their duty to the monarchy and their personal connections to the couple. The emotional fallout was not contained. It radiated outward, touching every corner of the palace ecosystem. Tension between William and Harry reached an emotional peak during private conversations that followed the announcement. While details remain closely guarded, insiders suggest that these discussions were intense, raw, and emotionally charged. Words that had been left unsaid for years now came to the surface. Frustration, hurt, and unresolved grievances collided with loyalty, love, and responsibility. The intensity of these interactions underscores a fundamental truth. Decisions that are strategic and institutional in nature are always human at their core. The emotional weight of these dynamics is amplified by the public nature of the announcement. In most families, disagreements can remain private. But in a family whose every move is scrutinized by the global media, the stakes are exponentially higher. Every emotional response is amplified, interpreted, and dissected in real time. This creates a feedback loop where personal feelings are constantly filtered through the lens of public perception, intensifying stress, resentment, and emotional complexity. The fallout also forced other family members to reassess their positions. Kate Middleton, for instance, reportedly felt the tension acutely. Her role as William's partner placed her in a delicate balancing act, supporting her husband, maintaining relationships with extended family, and navigating public perception. Every interaction, every private conversation carried emotional weight. The announcement redefined